This shoe store is a wonderful place, and one of the reasons it is because of the history of this space, which used to be the location of the Ravenite Social Club, where John Gotti, the last of the known Mafia, I'm not sure if he is or not, but this was his hangout. And I did live in this neighborhood during that period, and I have seen the store go through different iterations of being a social club exclusively for Italian men. There were many of them at that time when I moved in, to being bricked up because they didn't want anybody to look in. When I was aware of John Gotti coming, that's when I remember the bricking up happening. So you couldn't look in, and there were little windows, and there were always these big guys hanging out. The men have a very distinct style. You know, it's a little flamboyant, but you know, the whole shirt open, the medallion and all of that really did exist, you know? And you know, there's a certain confidence and a certain, you know, that they own it. You know, they own it. You know, here in this photo, he's telling people, here, I'm back. And John Gotti is quite relaxed in this photo. He's dressed really festively, should we say. He's got his striped t-shirt and his white shoes on. In fact, the white shoes are really great here. But they are very, very Italian summer shoes. I mean, the stripes, the white pants. This is really great. I don't know what happened to all those people, but they definitely don't hang out on the street anymore. And I love this neighborhood for other reasons. I think even in its current gentrified iteration, it still has a lot of character, and there are still a lot of small businesses, unlike most of the city now. So I still feel that it's a very good place to have a store like mine, because it really has a lot of meaning for me, you know, and that's basically what the store is about. You know, it's a combination of history, a handmade product, and then the interest of people in something that's gone in a way.
You know, when Italians first came to America, they were kind of forced together. And so when they got here, they were all kind of forced to live together, but 2 blocks over would have been people from Naples, living a block away from people from Sicily, another block away from people from Puglia, and so on. They'd have no communication even with each other. There was a lot of discrimination against Italians. These were very isolated, insulated communities. It wasn't an organized mafia at that point, nationally or even within the city, even within neighborhoods. It took a long time for law enforcement to really crack these very complex, dynamic social structures of Little Italies around America, because they were truly like these insular kind of colonies. If you came up here up until about 20 years ago, it was still very Italian. You'd find old ladies hanging laundry out the window, tomatoes growing on all the fire escapes, very utilitarian storefronts, meaning cheese shops, butchers, tailors, soccer clubs, pastry shops, things like that. As of today, all of the Italians are completely gone. Every one of these storefronts are very high-end designers. The rents are very expensive. Pretty much everybody that lives here is 30 years old and younger. It's very hip and trendy. In fact, they don't even call this Little Italy anymore. There's a new term, if you look at all the maps, it's called Nolita, which means north of Little Italy. So if you ask any of these kids where Little Italy is, they'll say, oh, you gotta walk 3 blocks down and make a right. Meanwhile, we've been in the middle of what's been Little Italy for over a century, and it's pretty much erased within a generation, completely overnight. By the 1970s, I believe there were over 2,000 murders a year in New York City. It was one of the most dangerous cities in America. We had entire neighborhoods that were burned out and, you know, abandoned. Little Italy was always known as the safest neighborhood in America. That was the term that was applied to it because it was very safe. There were social clubs on every block. There were always guys out at all hours of the night. They kept it very, very safe. One side of my family had the same apartment for about over 90 years, just a block away from the Ravenite. Even when I was growing up, there was still sometimes 3 Mafia social clubs in every block down here. It was very open. Everybody knew each other. They knew the names of everybody. It was almost like they were local celebrities. The club was very fortified. It was like a brick wall. I remember it had at one point had a little screen door, like a swinging country door. Like they kept it open all the time. Nobody's going to go rob the place, of course. There were always some guys milling around, but not really until the Gotti era, where you'd see a large concentration of people hanging out. Apparently weekly he held meetings there, so he had representatives from all the crews have to meet him there, so it's a little bit of a bigger deal during the Gotti era. But apparently the club goes back to at least the 1950s with Carlo Gambino, who they named the Gambino crime family after. From what I understand, it started out as the Ravenite Social Club, like Knights of Columbus, and eventually morphed together. by the time of the 1970s and the era of Neil Della Croce, who grew up across the street from the Ravenite. And so it kind of took on a different persona during the Gotti era. It became a little bit more openly active.
So my uncle actually got invited to John Gotti's daughter's wedding, and it was, he said, crazy. There were thousands of people there. The food was the best food he's ever had in his whole life. It was a party, went till like 5 a.m. And it's like funny because most people my age, I'm 20 years old, wouldn't know who John Gotti is, but this was like a family story. This is something my dad told me to wear like a badge, that my uncle went to John Gotti's daughter's wedding. But my dad told me that this was a different place back in the day, and we go to Il Cortils for dinner, and that's our place because every Soprano has eaten dinner there, and there's pictures of every character from The Sopranos at each table, so that's where we go. My dad said that it's so sad how small Little Italy has gotten, and you know, the culture, and that it's not even Italian people living here anymore, and that it was a different, I wouldn't even recognize Little Italy back in the day. But I did hear that like Gotti controlled most of these restaurants and shops, and that like just a store would be closed, or like you could just go in and be like, I want fireworks. And like, of course they're illegal, but you could just go in and be like, I want fireworks, and they would take you through these alleys, through the back little nooks and crannies of like stores and restaurants, and you would get whatever you wanted. And Gotti controlled it all, and it was just a network. I was never allowed to watch Sopranos growing up, but it was always on, and like the season finale, the series finale was like the biggest deal to my parents, and like my dad cried at the end when it just ended like that. There's no way this was real life, but my parents firmly believe this is like what my uncle went through. This is real life. This is Italian American at its finest. And the funniest part of it all is that I was raised so Italian. My grandpa, right off the boat, I knew Italian curse words before I knew English curse words. And I find out, you know, a few years ago, my dad was 40 years old, he found out he was adopted. I'm 100% Irish, not Italian whatsoever. Yeah.
Available now on video on demand.